There is something that every WoW player, current or former, feels right before an expansion launch. It's that itch to return, and that is no surprise. For years now, WoW has been pouring tons of money into marketing right before expansion launches. It's one of the main reasons that the game seems to have these big spikes in player count that then quickly falls off a month or two later. I would say most players have a history of falling off the game, but something about Shadowlands just felt different. There was a very noticeable quality dip, which was especially jarring because of the strong launch. It took several months to hear anything about major updates, and what they did announce failed to impress. Combine that with their refusal to listen to player feedback and the Blizzard lawsuits last year that led to the mass exodus to FF14, fueled by big Twitch streamers. It seemed like the walls around World of Warcraft might finally have started to close in. So, cut to today, Dragonflight Pre Patch starts in, I think, a few days. What changed? Besides the expert marketing and the usual itch, what has me tempted to go back, as well as maybe you? Well, let's talk about it. The first and biggest reason for me personally is the lack of mandatory content. Shadowlands was plagued by things like the Maw, Torghast, and Renown. Torghast in particular was the worst offender. In my last video, I briefly mentioned that my biggest problem in Shadowlands was that lack of side content. It made me so frustrated that in my second video I made on this channel, it was about that very topic. Please don't watch it. It's really bad. Now, I also brought this up in my last video, but for the sake of those who didn't watch it, in the second video I made on my channel, I compared the endgame experience of MMOs to a steak dinner. And a TLDR of the most important point was content like the Maw and Torghast was the gravy that you asked to come on the side. Now, when your steak does come to the table, it is covered in gravy. You can do your best to scrape it off, eat around it, you will have to eat some of it. And that's what things like Torghast were. If I wanted to raid, do M+, or PvP, I would have to do Torghast. Now, if the gravy did come on the side, like I asked for, I could dip my steak into it whenever I wanted, but instead the cooks, in this case Blizzard, they made that choice for me. But in Dragonflight, as far as I can tell, there is no content like that. There is no major barrier to the actual content that I want to do, besides gear, obviously, and that's huge for me. And it also makes the game more alt-friendly. I won't have to repeat the same mind-numbingly dull content on 2 or more characters just to use them. Now, taking this approach also allows Blizzard to play around with their side content more. I remember when Torghast was on alpha, people were really excited and it seemed to have so much potential. Cut to when they tied it to legendaries, therefore making every player do it. They had to tune it to every single player. It couldn't be too long, too difficult, and definitely couldn't be too rewarding. So bottom line on this point, the fact that there is no mandatory content in Dragonflight is such a big motivator for me to return. Also, there is no borrowed power, which seemingly has been replaced by the new talent trees. Which, I mean, yeah, I always end up picking whatever the math people dictate is best, but there is a lot more diversity in builds now. From patch to patch, builds are going to change more and more, which will keep things from getting stale. Next thing I want to talk about is dragon riding. It looks really, really fun, and there's some actual depth to it. There are races, there are cosmetics, as well as a lot of player agency on what your dragon looks like. Which, I mean, yeah, I'm a slut for some customizable mounts. But there's another reason that dragon riding excites me. It shows a willingness to borrow ideas. It's no secret that dragon riding is literally Guild Wars 2 flying, and frankly, I applaud Blizzard for this. They should be borrowing ideas that work from other games. In fact, it also seems like they took a page from FF14 when it comes to professions. Now, I've never been more professions guy, but a lot of things announced sound neat. Things like commissions and profession gear pique my interest. Not to mention, it's really immersive. I don't have a ton to say in professions. Again, I've never been big on them, but I felt it was worth mentioning because I still think it's a huge step in the right direction. I'm going to take a brief moment here to invite you to like the video if you are enjoying it. It really helps me out in the algorithm, and it lets me know if this content is enjoyable. Thanks for that. Now back to the video. Next thing I want to talk about is the changes to M+. I'll admit I don't exactly know or understand all of them, but here is what I like to the best of my knowledge. Biggest thing has to be the addition of older dungeons. I mean, what a great idea. Not only does it add more content, but helps mitigate the larger issue of dead content in the game. I almost came back for Season 4 just for M+. It also adds diversity to every season, which is great for incentivizing players. They've also made some adjustments to the scaling, which on paper do seem good, although once again, not entirely sure what the exact changes are, but it seems to me like it's an attempt to make it more rewarding, which at least shows they're listening. All the good stuff aside, they still haven't addressed any of my own personal issues with M+. I still think it's way too punishing for something that majority of players end up pugging anyways. I don't think keys should deplete, and tyrannical is still a thing. I definitely think that going forward, there should be more agency in what dungeons you choose to do, or what affixes you get. Either way, I have always enjoyed M+, and I'm glad they're taking some steps to improve it. And I almost completely forgot that they merged the factions, which is just huge. You know, I've always been a Horde player, but I'm not gonna lie. That was out of a necessity. I like the Alliance races more. I'm just gonna say it. That might be a hot take. I like them more. Alright? You know, it's a huge incentive for me to come back, because that opens up so much more possibilities. Not just for, like, my own customization and my own expression of my character in my game, but in terms of who I can play with. So that's just huge. Hopefully they do add cross-faction guilds in the future. Fingers crossed on that one. But in terms of big things that have me on the edge of resubbing, that's about it. Another smaller thing is I just miss that gameplay. One thing WoW has always had over 14 is the gameplay. It's very moment to moment. It's so snappy. It's so much fun. Not saying that 14's is bad, but I miss Execute. Okay, so I've talked on and on about the good things that I've seen from Dragonflight. Are there any bad things? 100%. First thing is dailies. I know they were doing Renown instead of Reputation this time, but it's basically still the same thing. There's one for each zone, do some dailies, do some world quests, get the mounts, that's it. I mean, maybe they change a few things up, I haven't heard anything, but if I am wrong on that, please feel free to correct me. Another thing is that the new Evoker class and Drakthir race, I very much disagree with their philosophy on Drakthir in particular. For starters, I feel like you should be able to choose your non-dragon race. Instead, you get a strange-looking elf. But more than that, Evokers don't excite me. I don't understand why there are only 2 specs. The healing spec looks fun, but the ranged spec just does not do it for me. I mean, at least visually speaking, I haven't actually played it. I don't see why there couldn't be a tank spec. They look like they're built to be tanks. Also, they have claws. Why can't they be a melee spec as well? I mean, I get it. In terms of new classes, Evoker is the only one to add in a range spec, but I don't see why they couldn't also add in other specs as well. And I mean, I guess that's more of a me problem. I'm sure most people are fine with it. I'm just a difficult person to please in general, let's be honest. So with all that being said, will I be returning to Azeroth? Probably not, which I know it sounds very anticlimactic, but hear me out. It's not really because of Dragonflight. Like, I want to play it, it looks fun, but there are 2 things. First, there's still a lot of content I want to do in 14. I still haven't done all the ultimates, as well as finishing things like Eureka, Boja, the new Criterion dungeon, and I don't know if I can see myself dedicating my time to 2 MMOs. Even if FF is more casual friendly and Dragonflight is also seeming to be more casual friendly, that's 2 characters, 2 subs, 2 gear grinds to go for, and I'm not sure if that's something I could commit to. And as I just talked about in my last video, when it comes to MMOs, friends are the #1 factor of fun, and I have no friends to go back to in WoW. As far as I can tell, maybe some people snuck back in there, but most of them went to 14 or just quit any MMO altogether. I suppose I could try making new friends, but talking to people is scary, let's be honest. Bottom line, as much as I would like to play it, I don't think I will. That being said, I hope it does go well. A success for one MMO is a success for all of them. In such a niche genre, this kind of competition is so good, as is very apparent with Dragonflight. So are you playing Dragonflight? Why or why not? I'd love to hear it in the comments below. If you did enjoy today's video, maybe consider hitting the subscribe button. Lets me know I'm doing a good job. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great day.